Good morning. Our hand today is going to be Jack 10 clubs. I'm under the gun, I open raise. Here's my early position open raising range. We're under the gun, so I probably wouldn't be increase, or I wouldn't have twos, threes, or fours, and probably ace two, ace three. But we'll go with this regular range. Folds around, button calls, and we're going to see the flop. So button is playing tight, mostly passive. He's playing 18-9. I have 162 hands on him. Pre-flop stat, 14% button cold call. Hasn't really 3-bet. He has from the big blind, 1 out of 14, but really hasn't 3-bet from the cutoff or the button. I'm going to assume that it's just because of small sample sizes. So this is a 16.6% range. I think a player like this calls with pocket pairs. I think he calls with these suited broadways, probably the suited aces, probably the suited connectors. Not sure about the offsuit, but we'll include like the Broadway in here. It fits kind of the ranges, at least frequencies. I do have him raising queens plus ace king, so I think it's just kind of gives us a starting point. Flop comes out jack high, 2 spades. I think this kind of hits both of us. I do think I have queens, kings, aces in my range, whereas this villain does not. I'm curious to see what GTO says, but I went ahead and c-bet here. Try to take it in a way protect my hand. I do know that if queen, king, ace comes out on the turn, I can probably bet it and might be able to pick up a fold. At this point, I don't know what, I have him folding 80% when he's out of position, 0% when he's in position, but in position he's only been in it once. So I kind of think like if he doesn't connect with this flop, then he's just going to fold. And I think I'm going to be okay with that because I think there's a lot of hands that could come, or a lot of cards that could come on the turn that would really just, destroy my hand. An ace, for example. If an ace comes, my guess is I'll be behind because he does have a lot of these aces. So I fired half pot, he called, so he's got something in his hand, and then I turned the jack. So I got trip jacks, and I think with this, if he called, he probably has a spade. Probably on that spade draw. Could have a jack himself, but I have one. There's only 2 jacks left in the deck. Maybe he has 8-9 or 9-10. Would he call again? Maybe. I fired the bet to try to control pot size because I didn't want to check and then have him bet, a pot, which I guess probably isn't bad. We'll see. We'll see what GTO says. On his turn, he hasn't really had any raises, hasn't really had pro bets. Flop. He has check raised once on the river. Really hasn't done that. He's probed once. So then the king spades comes out, and at this point, I fired a half pot bet. Again, I think the reason I did this was I didn't want to check and face a bet of 30 big blinds because I feel like I would have to fold that. Whereas if I bet half pot, I'm not sure if if he raises, he's got me beat. But this is a scary board, so I'm not really expecting a raise. I would expect a bet if I check though. So he calls, and we see a showdown. So let's check out GTO. So GTO suggests that we bet 38%. It is definitely a mixed strategy. So our overpairs, we're betting ace, kings, queens. Some trips we're somewhat betting 2s, betting some of our 7s. What about jack 10? Sometimes we're betting, sometimes we're checking. So it kind of could go either way. Maybe maybe checking would have been a little bit better, but I bet, so that's okay. Now, if villain plays GTO, he's going to be calling with quite a few hands, including like King Queen, King 10, which I think those are the hands that I would assume could have called, but maybe not. Maybe not. So he called. Jack of Diamonds came out, and now since we bet 37%, now we're supposed to check even with our jacks, which I think is a little surprising. So why would we check? So if we check and he bets, what do we raise? We raise quads. We call Jack 10. What is he calling? Middle pair. Middle pair plus. So if we bet, what hands are going to call? Well, I mean, quads should raise. Full house should raise. Three of a kind mostly call. Pocket pair. And I just feel like we're getting called a lot. I wonder if this bet here, or if this check here is all about just kind of balancing all of the hands that we would have checked. So like we don't really have a strong betting range. We don't have, with that jack, we can't really bet with queens, kings, or aces because he's gonna call with a jack. If we check and he bets, we're calling with those hands, but we're not betting because if we bet and he raises, I think we're gonna have to fold those. But we could check call here, and some of our raises are gonna be big. So I think ace jack, queen jack. We don't have king jack in there. So the jack with the higher kicker, but not so much jack with the 10 kicker. All right, so kind of made a mistake here. We should have just checked it, but we didn't. We bet. He calls. King of spades. Is he raising any of his draws? Yeah, he's raising some of his draws, not a whole lot. So then, once we bet and he calls, now we're betting again, and at this point, with all of our hands that we're betting, you can see that we have mostly, I mean, not a huge number of combos, but we're betting 3 of a kind plus, so I think my bet's probably okay. Like how I played it, minus, 75%. So we bet and he calls because, I do think he's going to call probably top pair or weak pair. He's calling a flush. So turn, I think turn is where it goes. So we would have checked. If he checks behind, that's good. Then we can lead out with our bet. And he should raise with the flush or full house. And if he raises, I think we have an easy fold. So he's talking here, they're talking about like calling with it, but I think versus, exploitatively, I think it's going to be an easy fold. If we bet, so check on the turn and then bet. Yeah, that's, I think, how we probably should have played it. I think that's how we should have played it. All right, so what did he have? He showed queen 10 of spades, so he had the flush draw. So does he have that? Yeah, I do believe he does. So you can say queen 10, definitely he's got that in his calling range. We bet queen 10 in his calling range again, and again, diamonds or spades. And then I bet here, and his calling range, queen 10 again. So I think that's okay. What if we check? What's he supposed to do? He should be betting that. And I'm not sure if he does that. Did he have any raises here with his flush draws? He did. He had a few raises, but does he do that? Probably not. So in summary, I think the mistake here was on that turn. And I think it comes down to how many other hands do we have that we're betting? That we're betting for value, and we don't really have a lot, so it turns our hands into more of a check. Yeah, we've got pocket jacks that we can bet, but that's the last out. only one hand combo. Yeah, we can bet queen jack, we can bet ace jack, but I mean, of those hands, very, very few out. So we're going to have to convert a lot of our other hands to checks, which means we're going to need some of these trip jack hands just for protection. And again, if we check and he bets, I mean, we're not giving up. We would be calling in this case. And then we're going to be checking again on the river. We're checking again on the river. And if he bets, we're probably just going to be calling again with our jacks. I think at this time, if we check on the turn and he bets, I think it's less likely that he has a spade or the diamond. So I think maybe the diamond draw, but if we check call the turn, if we check the river and he bets, I think we're probably just going to be forced to call. And we're really not going to be calling like one pair hands. Yeah, we'll have some overpair with aces, but it's going to be 3 of a kind plus. So I think that's where we went wrong. We were a little too aggressive. We had to think about our entire range and say what percentage of that range is a value bet and which is more of a bluff. And and I think we see on the turn that I don't really have a huge value range on that turn, which means it converts our strategy to mostly checking at that point. All right, hopefully you enjoyed this. If you did, look tomorrow for another hand.